Talk to me nice, talk to me honestly. Look in my eyes, don't let it fall.
Today's workshop is called How Well Do You Understand Your Compensation? As a finance professional, I get really excited about topics like this because the reality impacts everyone's lives or livelihood, etc. So let's talk about compensation. I do hope to have this session to be more of an interactive session. So if you have any questions or concerns or just, curious about an opportunity and you want to have some insights, definitely feel free to ask a question or wait till the Q&A side of the house. Now let's jump right in. So who am I? My name is Roshiana, and currently I'm a senior finance manager at Intel Corporation. I have about 6 years in tech, specifically at Intel and also at VMware. I've also worked in banking at JP Morgan Chase. Now a little bit more about myself from an academia perspective. I received my bachelor's degree in international business and trade from the University of Buffalo, and I received my MBA from Simon Business School at the University of Rochester with a focus on corporate finance and investment strategy. So hearing Christy speak gave me a lot of goosebumps because her career trajectory, there's so much synergies there for her and myself. So again, very refreshing to hear another finance professional really talk about their trajectory. I'm also a member of the Consortium for Underrepresented Minority, which is an MBA, in essence, foundation, as well as the National Black MBA Association. You might hear by my voice that I do have some form of accent. I was born in Jamaica, but I was raised between Toronto and New York City. Like many of you guys, we all have aspirations, and I will definitely like to highlight a bit about mine. My greatest aspiration is to become CFO, that's Chief Financial Officer. So definitely following the likes of Christy and two of my mentors, Tashonda Duckett and Kathy Waller, who was the former CFO of Coca-Cola Company. Now, let's get into meat of why we're here. So from a gender perspective, definitely want to understand what is compensation and how is that compensation structure determined from a more high-level perspective. And on top of that, the other side of total compensation that we also need to talk about, and that's some of the benefits that our organizations do provide. And then definitely want to leave an opportunity at the end for us to really have that discussion about how much do we understand our compensation and any questions you may have. So again, if you have any questions, definitely put them in the chat, or you can wait till the end where we can have a little bit of a discussion point. Now let's jump into the real meat of why we're here. So we're going to start with compensation and that compensation structure. Now, what is compensation? In definition, compensation is defined as the reward paid to employees in exchange for services or work rendered. There's two types of that reward paid. There's a popular one that we all know, and that's your base pay. And then there's your variable pay. So base pay, in essence, falls into two buckets. There's your fixed salary or hourly wages, depending on the type of employee that you are. And we'll get to the types of employees after. And the next aspect is your variable pay. When you think of variable pay, you're thinking of the bonuses, the commissions, and that's exactly what that variable pay is. Variable pay falls into a few buckets, but the common ones are your one-time sign-on bonuses, your relocations. But the performance-driven ones are really tailored to your overall individual performance, your company targets and how your company trends towards those targets, and how that benefit waterfalls down to you from a variable perspective. And for, of course, sisters in sales, that commission is a big portion of your overall compensation package. We'll definitely touch a little bit more on that later. Now to the types of employees. All of us here on this workshop, we fall into one of these three buckets. Myself, I consider a full-time employee. So I'm paid based on a fixed salary. And there's the other aspect where there are some part-time workers. So that's more of a hybrid model, and that's based on the terms of your employment. Next, we have contractors. These are your hourly paid wages. So in essence, a fixed rate times the hours of service that's worked. And I love, I'm looking at the chat, I'm happy with what I'm seeing so far. And then what we have, last but not least, is your fixed price consultants or fixed price contractors, depending on how your organization categorizes these individuals. These individuals, for example, are consultants from popular, your Deloitte, your E&Y. These are examples of fixed price consultants who are from a different organization but are doing work on behalf of your organization. And this is based on a fixed agreement, how they are paid. Now that we've learned about the base and the variable side, and the types of employees, and where we fit within these three categories, let's take a look at that compensation structure. So what I'm showing here is pretty much a hierarchy of total compensation structure. I definitely want to highlight that for the variable pay here, which you're seeing in the middle, this is just a subset of the endless amount of variable pay opportunities or incentives that are available. So at one point or another, we've all interacted with a hiring manager or recruiter, or maybe we asked for a raise. Oftentimes the question we get asked is, what is your total salary expectation, or what is your total expected compensation? Your first thought is to go to your base pay, your fixed pay, meaning your salary. But that compensation structure does encompass the other side, the variable side, and in some aspects that benefits. So as before, we've touched on the base, that's your salary and your hourly wages. Now let's look at the variable side of the house. As I mentioned, there's incentives such as your one-time sign-on bonus or relocation. There's your target bonus that is inclusive of your individual target performance, your line of business or your business unit targets, as well as your company-wide targets. Some of those benefits, as mentioned, may waterfall down to you, and as well the aspect of commission. But what you're also seeing on the other side are the other aspects as it relates to equity. You have stock ownership, stock options, and profit sharing. With stock options and ownership, we'll get a little bit into that because those are in essence two types of equity. They're not the same, even though they do have some kind of synergy. And to the far right, we have the benefits. Unlike base and variable, benefits are depending on provision by law as well as company specific. So for example, insurance is provision by law. So as a public traded company, providing insurance through healthcare providers, etc., is legally binding. Now, a next example is looking at the aspect of company specific. My current employer, Intel Corporation, provides sabbatical. So sabbatical is an incentive or benefit that's provided to full-time employees who have worked a specific amount of tenure. They're given incremental vacation days or time off. That is what sabbatical is. And that's an example that's specific to Intel. But we'll definitely do a little bit more of a click down in a subsequent slide. I do want to highlight here and give this big disclaimer. The information that's provided within this workshop, this is purely for educational purposes. Please connect or consult with your HR professional or your business partner, or even connect with or check your employee handbook to get more company-specific compensation benefit information. Again, this is purely based on my own experience and also additional research throughout my career. So now let's click down into the base and the variable side of the house. I would have left it thrown in a question, understand, to do like a quick pop quiz. What's the difference between stock ownership and option? But we'll talk about that a little bit later. So we're really focusing on the base and the variable side here. Definitely want to highlight compensation structure. It does vary by your industry. It does vary by your company, and also an aspect of your hierarchy. Hierarchy as it means in regards to your leveling, your grade level, and your title. I will definitely emphasize, if you're not aware of your leveling or your grade level or your title, please connect with your manager or your HR business partner, because it's important to understand your grade level and your compensation as it relates to your peers and the wider organization. So for example, my grade level, as I'm going through my own individual performance, I'm mapping out my plan for the fiscal year. So when I do meet with my manager, I understand that my grade level is X. Here are the expectations for my grade level. Here's my total compensation. Here's where I'm at, and here's the expectation of where I want to go. I understand the gap between where I'm at today, my overall expectation from my manager, as well as how I compare to my peers. So having that information is very important to equip yourself with as you're matriculating throughout your career. Now let's jump right into the base and the variable side. As we mentioned, base pay falls into two buckets. There's a salary, which in essence is your fixed pay each pay cycle. So even if you work 40 hours or 50 hours, your fixed salary is a lot of the same amount within each pay cycle. Now, in the hourly wage perspective, as we connected before, that's mainly around the contractor aspect. Contractors are paid based on a fixed rate times the hours of service rendered. So if the fixed rate is $10 and they work 40 hours, you're able to do that math. Now, if they worked an incremental 10 hours, what does that mean for their overall compensation? In some industries, overtime is applicable, not in all industries or at all levels. So definitely confirm with your hiring manager, etc., if overtime, if you're an hourly wage employee, if overtime is applicable for you. Now let's get to the meat of this slide, and this is where we really want to focus on, and that is on the variable side of the house. As we mentioned, there's some options including sign-on bonuses and relocation. We touched a little bit on the target and the company bonus. Again, this is driven by your own individual performance. Did you meet or exceed the expectations you and your manager have put in place? And what are the financial benefits of doing so? There's the LOB or BU. LOB is your line of business. BU is business unit. So does your company have specific LOB, BU targets that you also get to benefit and also influence, right? Those are also incremental opportunities for incremental variable pay. And then the one that we're pretty much familiar with, that's company-wide target. A good example is if you're a publicly traded company, you're on the street meaning Wall Street. Each company has specific targets they must each quarterly term. So if your company meets or exceeds that target, is there any opportunity or favorability from a compensation perspective that is watered down to you? Now to a big one, if equity is a really important part of your compensation package, stock options and ownerships are very important. As I mentioned, there's a difference between stock option and ownership. So stock option comes in the option of RSUs. RSUs are restricted stock units. These are stocks that are allotted to you, restricted stocks that are allotted to you by your company that vest over a period of time. That vesting period is specific by company. So it's definitely important to, again, refer back to your company handbook or connect with your HR representative to understand what is that vesting period. Is it monthly? Is it quarterly? Is it annually? Or is it over a set period of time and it vests? Also want to recognize with vest and also with the ownership side, there is tax implication as your stocks do vest. So again, a lot of that information is readily available in your handbook. Now to stock ownership. Again, as I mentioned, stock ownership differs from stock option. Stock ownership is the option to purchase stocks at an agreed upon price. That agreed upon price might differ from, and if you wanted to go external to a broker and buy stock A, or going, for instance, using a platform such as Robinhood. So there's some form of favorability there for you by going through the stock option and ownership opportunity for you. And the one that's applicable to many of us on here, this workshop, is commission, right? Commission derives in many aspects, whether that's building up the pipeline for your organization, committing sales, meaning sales turn into profits and revenues, and that's helping the company to meet their targets. With many organizations, within that commission bucket, there's multipliers, meaning you have a set target to meet, and exceeding that target gives you incremental benefits or exponential benefits, depending on what those multiples are for those specific targets and or products that you're prioritizing. So again, that's the aspect of commission. I know I'm giving a lot here, so if you do have any questions, definitely throw it in the chat, and we can definitely talk about it closer to the end. Now, last but not least on this slide is profit sharing. Profit sharing is very similar to the aspect of target company bonus. The only difference with the company profit sharing is you are getting an allocation of the company's profits, right? So let's say a company makes $100 million in profits, hypothetically, and you receive 1% of that. That's pretty hefty. That's that allocation as profit sharing. And that's based on the earnings cadence, whether it's quarterly or the fiscal annual performance. So annually or quarterly. Now, again, these are some of the more common variable incentives that are available, and also very important as you're going into whether you're looking to seek a new opportunity, internally, externally, understanding some of these variable opportunities and really being able to negotiate some of those. And on the aspect of negotiation, I definitely want to highlight, as you're looking for new opportunities, whether you're entry level, mid, or senior level, there is opportunity to negotiate. There are bargaining powers to definitely factor in. And I hope some of these are opportunities that you will, in essence, focus on. I know it's a lot, so I'll definitely take a minute to let you guys look a little bit. And then what I'm going to focus on next are those atypical variable opportunities that are available. So for example, many organizations do give time off for vacation days. Others have been able to negotiate for more vacation days or more time off. Again, these are atypical, but there are opportunity to do so if you're looking to negotiate your salary, your total compensation even further. Next, we have living arrangements or subsidy. Living in high-cost location like the Bay Area, rent and mortgage is very expensive. So there's been individuals who've actually negotiated for living arrangements. Some companies do provide corporate housing on a temporary basis and sometimes long-term. Being able to negotiate that in your package might be a major selling point because this also helps to minimize your expense that you pay. So that's, again, a good opportunity, rare, but it's there. Others including, let's say you wanted to get accreditation. Maybe you saw an AWS accreditation that you're interested in, or maybe you want to pursue your MBA to help you get to that next level. Some corporations either will pay for that opportunity or reimburse you for that opportunity. But it's very important to understand, again, referring back to your HR business partners, really understand the mechanics. If your organization does compensate or reimburse you for these opportunities, bear in mind there might be a set period of time you must stay with that organization. So a common example is one of the companies I work for, where individuals wanting to get their MBA, the company will cover the expense, but you must stay with that organization for at least 5 years, or you must pay back the tuition essence that incurred. So again, there are opportunities there as well. And the other common ones too, especially during this work from home environment during the pandemic, we're all working from home. There have been others who've negotiated to be completely remote or have a hybrid approach that's the atypical of the standard. So there's opportunities to negotiate those working hours, car allowances, and phone stipends. Also, again, during this pandemic, a lot of employers have provided their employees with stipends to, in essence, uplift their work from home workstation, as well as compensating for Wi-Fi. Those are other opportunities that are also relevant to the time that we're in to help, again, making that package a little bit more attractive for you. So I hope you at least learned at least one or two new variable incentives to factor in as you're going throughout your career. Again, whether you're starting a new job or got a new job offer, or you're looking for a raise or promotion, these are some of these opportunities that you can factor in to your overall total compensation package. Now, we've looked at the base, we've looked at the variable and the extensive list of variable opportunities. Now, you may wonder, I see the number, but how do these companies come to my compensation package? How do they derive to this number? Well, to tell you, there's a lot of art and there's a lot of science. There's a lot of data and a lot of research that goes into making that compensation package. Even if you do have to negotiate for a higher number, other incentives, there's a lot of data that really support why companies really model their compensation package to why it is. For the purpose of today, we're going to keep it high level and really focus on two of the major areas, as well as bringing in some of those additional factors that are really about you. I really want to bring you into this conversation as we're looking at how this compensation is determined. So for the top two I want to focus on is your market analysis and research. And then the other is really more specific to the organization that you're joining. And that's that organizational structure and strategy, meaning how does your job, your title fit into your company's mission and objective? So starting with the market analysis and research side, there's the market landscape, and then we have the competitive landscape. So especially, we have the pandemic going on. If you do follow the news or, the market, meaning US economy, the conversation around inflation is very popular right now. So the Feds are assessing the inflation or current inflation and the future inflation. That affects every organization and every company and how they do business. That also consequently impacts downstream to you as well, including your compensation. The other aspect is timing of when you're going into the market and the demand for your skill set, right? So if the market are looking for sales professional who have expertise around SaaS or SASE, that might be a great leveraging opportunity for you because there's a demand for that specific skill set that you have. And a major key or major part here is location and cost of living. As I mentioned, living in the Bay is expensive. Rents, etc., is very expensive out here. So your cost of living is also factored into that market research as your company is deciding what is that optimal range, salary range for individuals within this grade level within this organization. So again, those are some of the market landscape that really drive that. And I want to give an example, just kind of making it a little bit more personal. As I was going through my business school program, one of the examples that we got that was very critical to understanding the timing of and how timing impacts your salary are my alumni from my business school that entered the workforce during the 2007-2008 stock market crisis. Many of those individuals took pay cuts or took opportunities where the salary was significantly lower than pre-crisis. Now, imagine comparing their salary to individuals that graduated 3-4 years later, right? There's going to be a massive salary gap between the two examples, the two cohorts that we're looking at. Again, and this is why it's important to understand your grade leveling, your title, and your compensation relative to your peers and your wider organization. So again, the timing and the demand of your specific skill set, aspects of the economy such as inflation definitely impact that market landscape. Now let's look at the other side, the competitive landscape. When we think competitive, we're directly thinking our company's direct competitor. That is a great example, but also in regards to the wider industry. It's important to understand, does your company, from a compensation perspective, do they lag the market in regards to pay? Do they match the market or do they lead the market? Lead an aspect, do they pay more than the average in the market? A lot of information about that is available on the internet. So it definitely helps a couple as you're looking at specific organization or even your own to understand where does my pay land between the overall market and my company's competitors as a reference point. So again, that's more of the market research and in essence, the landscape side of the house. Now, how does that relate to your specific employer or that employee that's potentially offering you that job opportunity? As I mentioned before, your grade level, your title is important, not just from a pay compensation, but how does that fit into your overall strategy? Let's say your company is looking to go full force into this cloud migration and cloud infrastructure is your number one priority. Does the job offer you receive, is that an area where you tie into the objective of the organization? If it doesn't, that's okay. It's important to recognize that is there a gap there or does that impact my pay in one way or another? That's important to recognize, as well as your scope of work. What is the type of work that you're doing? Now let's make it relatable to everyone here at the summit. Many of you here are in sales or interested in going into sales. Sales is a revenue generating opportunity. As a company looks at profitability, revenue and sales is a major driver of that. So your role really correlates to the success and the performance of your company. So where does my salary fit within that? If I'm revenue generating and I drive towards a success, is that being reflected in my salary? And frankly, too, does your business unit or the organization have the budget for the salary expectation that you're looking for? Those are things that do get factored in as to how compensation is determined. And for the example, I use sales, but this is regardless if you work in finance, if you're a product manager, etc. Our roles, our scope of work we do has some form of impact on the organization and the overall strategy. So yes, your salary is also contingent upon your title, your scope of work as it relates to your company objective, complemented by market research, the timing of the market, as well as how you compare to your competitors. So I know I gave a lot, but I hope you've been able to digest that so far. And again, if you have more questions, definitely feel free to drop those in the chat and we'll talk about them a little bit closer to the end. Now, the part about this of compensation is determined and how this relates to you. As an individual, you are an asset. That is one thing I always let everyone know, no matter if you're coming into the workforce as an entry-level associate or as a senior manager, right? You bring asset, you're an asset and you bring value to any organization. Now let's look at that. The additional factors we want to bring in here that really customizes your compensation package towards you is your qualifications and your accreditations, whether it's the AWS, whether it's your bachelor's degree, your master's, your associate's degree, those accreditations coupling with the qualifications that you have. Your relevant years of experience. As I mentioned, I have about 5 years of relevant tech experience and also some from banking. Those are transferable skills. So knowing that also helps to impact my overall compensation package. Also location, right? We mentioned the Bay Area is a high cost location versus other low cost location where the cost of living is not as intensive and extensive as that of the Bay Area. That will also play a factor in how your compensation is derived. The cost of living in Tallahassee, Florida is vastly different of that living in San Francisco Bay Area. So again, taking that in consideration. And last but not least, this one is a really, really important one because it really helps us steal that package for you. In fact, it helps to make sure you get an offer. How you perform in that interview is really important. because that helps to give you additional bargaining power. If this organization really wants you, they'll do what it takes from the budget, making sure your scope is aligned, matching the expectation that you have. So executing in your interview is critical, and also the expected salary. If you don't have a number going into an interview, do the research and find one. Why? Because it's important to recognize what is that cost of me leaving my current employer or coming to the workforce that's attractive for me, right? And if you don't have a number, there's an opportunity. You can put that ball back in that recruiter's court. A good example is to ask, what is that range for this role? What is the expected range of salary for this role? You can even be more specific and break it out. What's that base pay? What's that base salary? And what's that variable pay? Again, putting the ball back in the court of that recruiter gives you a little bit of insight into what that expectation is for that role. And you get to determine, do I add a premium to that? Do I go beyond the range that they've given me? And being able to take research to help couple why you may want a more competitive salary. So again, your compensation is the mix of how you perform that interview, your qualifications, the timing of how you're coming into the market, the competitive landscape, as well as what the company needs. I know, again, there's a lot that was given within this moment. I know we're running a little bit on time, so what I'll definitely jump into is the benefits, right? Benefits is just as important as compensation in regards of base and variable pay. Benefits is driven by company and industry and also by law. Some of the common benefits that we focus on are insurance, such as your medical, your life insurance, vision, and dental. The other aspect is looking at retirement and services. So your 401k, your Roth. You know, Chrissy mentioned it's important to invest in your retirement today. If you haven't started, please do so. Many companies do match. So if a company within tech that matches between 2 to 6%, understand if your company match. If they do, that's okay. Make sure you're doing that investment into your retirement. And the last but not least here is services. So we're women here, majority here are women. Maybe we're interested in childcare as a benefit for our family. Maybe you're not ready to take that next step. Some companies, including mine, have the benefit of freezing your eggs. Maybe you're interested in adoption or legal services, or maybe commuter benefits. These are other benefits that are independent of your grade level or your hierarchy, but are benefits that are specific to your organization. And what I've also listed here are some of the other options, including employee purchase program, mental health days, mental health services, corporate partner discounts that are also available. Again, there's so much more discounts, pardon me. There's so much more benefits and variable opportunities and incentives there. Please revert to your company handbook or connect with your HR business partner to understand what's that level of granularity and detail that are there for me to really assess for my package. And I know I'm just rushing a little bit on time. I'll just jump to the last few slides. I had the opportunity to ask, to understand who would love to tell how they go about understanding their compensation. But what I'll show here are some of the resources that are available to check where your compensation lies relative to your peers from a company perspective as well as the industry. Some of the popular ones, salary.com, Glassdoor. There's other options including PayScale, the Salary Project, and also the aspect of your mentors and your sponsors, your peers within those organizations and within your network. The conversation around compensation can be very uncomfortable, but is very impactful and very beneficial for you to understand where you fit within the industry. And I know, we're running close on time, so I did want to leave an opportunity for some questions. So let me just jump right into the chat if there's any. Oh man. So I know we are a little bit pretty much over it now. I'll definitely leave my contact information in the chat. If you do have some questions, would love to connect a bit further, definitely reach out and I can answer those questions offline. But thank you guys so much for joining the summit and also taking part in the workshop. I hope you were able to learn at least one or two more things beyond what Andrea and Chrissy talk about during the finance panel.